Okay, Julia, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this open meeting of the Science and Engineering Policy Committee of the National Science Board. I'm Julia Phillips. I have the privilege of chairing this committee on national science and engineering policy. Matt Malkin, who's joining us today, is our committee vice chair. I'd like to start by taking roll of the committee members. Please respond if you are here. Suresh Babu?
I'm here walking.
Okay. Joan Farini-Mundy? Yolanda Gill? Juan Gilbert? Oh, Yolanda's here. I see her. Okay. Juan Gilbert?
Here.
Thank you. Dorota Brzezinska? Mel Huff?
Here.
Matt Malkin?
Here.
Willie May? Ryan Pachasan, I'm going to have to work on this, right? Panchad Saram.
Here.
Great. We also expect a couple of three report reviewers on the line. Victor McCrary, I saw you, I think.
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Scott Stanley?
Here, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, thank you. And Wanda Ward?
Here.
Okay. Oh, and I see Joan Farini-Mundy is here as well. Do we have any other NSB members or NSB consultants on the phone today?
Bev Watford.
Marvy Mato Rodriguez is here.
Marvy, and who was the other?
Bev Watford.
Bev Watford and Merlin Theodore. Oh my, this is the committee to be on, isn't it? That's terrific. Our NSB liaisons are Amanda Vernon and Alexandra Serchel. Our executive secretaries are May Aiden and Stephen Dietz. We're also assisted by Andrew Zadinsky, who is a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow. Today, we are going to have our discussion of the detailed narrative outline and vote on that for the second report of Indicators 2026. This is the one on talent. So thank you in advance to the SEP committee members and board members for your engagement this cycle. It's been extremely useful. And NCSES, as always, your partnership is indispensable, and we appreciate the excellent work as we continue to implement the significant changes to the indicator suite that was approved by the board in May of 2024. Just very quickly recapping those changes. This cycle, we will have 4 main reports. There will be 3 thematic reports on STEM talent, discovery, and impact. And there will be the biennial summary report, the state of U.S. science and engineering. The summary, of course, report serves as the congressional deliverable at the end of the cycle. That's required by statute, and that will be released in March of 2026. The thematic reports will be released over the coming 2 years, aligned as well as possible with the timelines on which we expect to receive critical data sets for these different reports. We are also developing and launching a new public indicators data dashboard, and that will build from the model of our current data dashboard for state level indicators. So if you want a sneak preview, you can look at the state level indicator dashboard and see the wealth of information that is available there. The dashboard will provide important and typically more specific data trends than what you will see in the individual reports. Like the state indicators website, which is updated quarterly, this data tool will enable access to more timely data updates than is possible with an every other year cycle that we're on for the thematic reports and the summary report. And it will also enable us to develop more streamlined, focused thematic reports without losing the breadth of information that helps ensure that Indicators is the gold standard source for data on the U.S. science and engineering enterprise in a global context, something that is becomes more important with time. Finally, we plan to develop and release Indicators policy-neutral special topics through the next 2 years as issues of particular importance arise. The committee recently approved 2 focus topic areas for the first 2 of these reports, one on the skilled technical workforce and one on the STEM teacher workforce. Indicators is, just by way of tutorial, is prepared under the guidance of the board by the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, or NCSES. NCSES is an independent federal statistical agency which is located organizationally within the NSF. We are ever so happy to be working collaboratively with our NCSES colleagues, and this is a collaboration that has been extremely constructive and has endured over the years and over the evolution of indicators. Staff has sent an outline in the form of a draft narrative outline, or DNO, as we affectionately call it, that summarizes the topics, data sources, and substantive changes from the 2024 edition that the authors have planned. Of course, the 2024 edition was 3 separate thematic reports. This is 1 report, and therefore it is much more focused, and we hope quite well integrated across what was previously 3 separate reports. As a reminder about this meeting, our consideration of the outline today is the major opportunity for board members to shape the content of the report. Board input and suggestions that are provided at this point in the process have the most impact because there is much text still to be written and much data still to be incorporated. And so this is the point at which your input will be most helpful to our NCSES colleagues. This is especially true this cycle, as I've kind of foreshadowed, given the shift in our approach to report development. Your input during the DNO stage is really critical. And at the end of this meeting, if we have a quorum, we will vote on the outline, but this vote will be taken with the understanding that NCSES will revise the DNO as needed to respond to comments that arise during today's conversation. The revised and final DNO will, of course, be shared with the entire SEP committee. NCSES has also shared a list of report reviewers. If you have suggestions for the reviewer list, such as additional perspectives or topic areas of expertise, please email that information to Matt Malkin and to me, and also copy Amanda. We will share those suggestions with NCSES as they finalize the reviewer list in their broader process to ensure balanced coverage of each report's topic areas. Please don't bring up listed or potential reviewers by name on this call. That's not appropriate, but do let us know your suggestions. Following the presentation by the report authors, the lead reviewer, Wanda, will start the discussion. Then we will turn to our secondary reviewers, Scott and Vic, and then we will open up for general committee discussion with the authors. At the end of that discussion, assuming we have a quorum, we will have a vote of the committee on approval of the narrative outline, subject to any input we may give the authors today. Are there any questions or comments before we get started? Seeing none, let's turn the floor over to the report authors, Benjamin Schneider, Lulu Kam, Susan Rotermund, and Jackie Falkenheim. And over to you, Benjamin. I think you are the first up.
Yes, I just want to confirm everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, hello and good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Schneider, and I am one of the co-authors on the 2026 Science and Engineering Indicators Thematic Report titled STEM Talent. I'm joined today by co-authors Lulu Kam, Jackie Falkenheim, and Susan Rotermund, and we're really excited to present the detailed narrative outline on the STEM Talent Report. The purpose of the STEM Talent Report is to analyze trends along the pathway from early and elementary STEM education up to the STEM workforce and looking at indicators along every step of that pathway. This new report will combine indicators from 3 of the 2024 SEI thematic reports, including elementary and secondary STEM education, higher education and S&E, and the STEM labor force. All sections will also include information about geographic variation of the various indicators where applicable, and we include a section on international comparisons. So the STEM talent report will be divided into 4 main sections. These include the STEM workforce, the path to STEM employment, including education, training, and the transition to the STEM workforce, persistence and attrition in STEM education and training, and finally, international comparisons and global competitiveness. We're currently looking at a tentative dissemination date of September 2025. So with that, the rest of the presentation will be getting into each of these 4 main sections, detailing the indicators that will be in those sections, as well as the data sources that we plan to draw from. So with that, I'd like to pass the floor over to Lulu, who will present the STEM workforce.
Thank you, Benjamin. The STEM workforce is the bedrock of the science and engineering enterprise and is integral to the nation's ability to meet persistent and emerging global challenges. The labor section of the talent report describes the patterns and trends of this population. As with previous reports, this section begins with a count of STEM workers in 2023, how many workers are in STEM occupations, and the proportion of STEM workers in the workforce. STEM occupations include 3 groups: SNE, SNE-related, and middle-skill occupations. SNE occupations are occupations that typically require a bachelor's degree for entry. Some examples are computer scientists and engineers. Some occupations in the SNE-related field are healthcare workers and SNE managers. STEM middle-skill occupations typically do not require a bachelor's degree for entry. These positions are primarily in the areas of construction trades, installation, maintenance, and production. In this section, we ask, who are the STEM workers? We provide a high-level overview of the demographic composition of the STEM workforce, their race or ethnicity, and their sex. We look at variations of these characteristics by SNE, SNE-related, and middle-skill occupations. We also ask where STEM workers are. This analysis explores the geographic distribution and concentration of STEM workers by state and by rural-urban classification. The next section focuses on the foreign-born STEM workforce. We start with a count of foreign-born STEM workers and the percentage of the STEM workforce that is foreign-born. This section also includes an analysis of the citizenship status of workers, the country of origin, and variations by field. We then move to time trends, looking at the growth of the workforce from 2013 to 2023. We look at patterns by occupational field and by geography at the state level. In this section, we also look at projections of growth in STEM occupations using data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We then look at STEM pathways, including the degree attainment of STEM workers and whether there are spatial variations in the educational attainment of STEM workers by rural-urban classification. Using the National Survey of College Graduates, we study the movement of STEM-trained individuals into or out of STEM occupations, the movement of non-STEM trained individuals into STEM occupations, and also those who leave the labor force. Next, we report out on the earnings of the STEM workforce by field and by degree level. We also explore the economic outcomes of 2 subsets of the STEM workforce: recent graduates using the National Survey of College Graduates and a cohort of doctorate recipients using the Survey of Earned Doctorates. Using the NSCG, we can explore the relatedness between respondents' field of study and their occupation. The SED will allow us to see variations in doctorate recipients' earnings by employment type, whether they go into industry or business, academia, or government. We conclude the labor section with an examination of the economic activity of the STEM workforce. This section focuses on the industries where STEM workers are the most prevalent. It also examines the employment of STEM workers in knowledge and technology-intensive industries. I will now turn it to Susan, who will be talking about the path to STEM employment.
Thank you, Lulu. A globally competitive STEM education system equips Americans with the skills and knowledge needed to participate in the STEM workforce. Understanding STEM education at the K-12 level provides insight into how well students in the U.S. are prepared for earning post-secondary degrees and entering the STEM workforce. To begin looking at student performance in STEM topics, we use the data from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is an assessment that has been administered to nationally representative cohorts of students in the United States since the 1970s. It gives us an opportunity to look at change over time in student scores. This will be particularly important in this edition of indicators because we will be looking at scores in 2024. And we will be able to compare that performance to 2020 and 2022, where we saw significant declines in performance following the COVID pandemic. Hopefully the scores in 2024 will show that students are on the path to learning recovery, and these data will give us insight into those patterns. In addition, the NAEP data allows us to look at student performance in grades 4 and 8 in mathematics by a variety of different factors, including student factors, school factors, and teacher factors. So for example, we can look at student performance by such factors as student sex, their race or ethnicity, and their socioeconomic status. We can also look at school factors, including where schools are located, either urban, rural, suburban, or town, the region of the country by various census divisions, and then also whether or not schools offer math enrichment activities. Finally, the NAEP data allow us to look at student performance by teacher training. So for example, we can look at if there's a difference in performance based on whether teachers have an alternative credential or a standard teaching credential, and also understand student performance based on the years of teaching experience that math and science teachers have. I will now turn it to Jackie.
Thank you, Susan. On higher education, we will present data on STEM degree completions at the associate's, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels by field, state, type of institution, that is, STEM degrees completions at minority serving institutions with a focus on historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, and high Hispanic enrollment institutions. We will also cover the number of STEM degree completions at community colleges and degree completions by demographics, including sex, race and ethnicity, and citizenship status. The data for these sections will come from the 2023 IPEDS completion survey conducted by the National Center for Education Statistics. We will also look at the incidence of community college attendance among recent recipients of bachelor's degrees, and in particular, the timing of community college attendance, focusing on those who attended after high school but before enrolling in college, and also on those who attended a community college before earning a bachelor's degree. These data will come from the 2023 National Survey of College Graduates. At the doctoral level, we will look at the number of doctorate recipients who reported having attended a community college in the path to their doctorate by field of study. These data will come from the Survey of Earned Doctorates 2023. And next, Susan, for the next slide.
Thank you, Jackie. The next major topic area is persistence and attrition in STEM. Attrition of individuals from the U.S. S&E ecosystem occurs at various points along the pathway to employment in STEM occupations. This section presents indicators that highlight junctures in the pathway to STEM employment and where attrition may occur. We begin by using a data set that examines the outcomes for a cohort of high school students. This cohort were ninth graders in the fall of 2009, and the High School Longitudinal Data Study follows these students through June of 2021, which is up to 8 years after high school completion. Using this data, we are able to look at the percent of high school graduates who enter STEM degrees, and of those students, the percent that complete a STEM degree and the time to completion. We also can look at the type of STEM degrees that these students complete, whether it's a credential, an AA degree, or a BA degree. We can also look at attrition out of STEM degrees by examining the percent of students who start in a STEM degree but leave STEM before completing their undergraduate degree. Finally, because this is a longitudinal data set following the same cohort of students, we can look at the correlation between high school demographics and post-secondary outcomes. So for example, we can look at entry into and completion of post-secondary STEM degrees by student sex, their race or ethnicity, their socioeconomic status in high school, and their math achievement scores in high school. We can also look at where students are located both in type of locale and geographic division. And we can also look at the percentage of students who complete high school in one state, but enter post-secondary STEM education in another state. I will turn it to Jackie.
Thank you, Susan. We plan to analyze data from the beginning post-secondary students longitudinal survey conducted by the National Center for Education Statistics. This survey collected data on students at the beginning of their first year in academic year 2019-2020, and again at the end of their third year in 2022. We will look at the number of students who completed their degree during that time or were still enrolled after 3 years by field area at 2-year institutions and also at 4-year colleges and universities. For students, for undergraduate students who were enrolled at 4-year colleges and universities, we will look at the number of those who switched their major area, for example, from an S&E field in their first year to a non-S&E field by the end of their third year, and vice versa, from a non-S&E field to an S&E field. At the doctoral level, we will look at data on the transition to employment of doctorate recipients who had definite commitments for employment or postdoctoral study or training in the United States by field and also by citizenship status. These data will be from the 2023 Survey of Earned Doctorates. Next goes back to Susan.
So in the next section, we look at international comparisons and global competitiveness. Global competitiveness in the S&E enterprise is critical for the United States. This competitiveness begins at the elementary and secondary school level. We begin this section by looking at how U.S. K-12 student performance in math, science, and computer science compares with their peers in other countries. We use 3 different data sources to understand the performance of U.S. students. The TIMSS 2023 data ranks U.S. performance of students internationally in grades 4 and 8 in mathematics and science. PISA 2022 ranks U.S. performance by 15-year-olds in mathematics and science. By using data from both TIMSS and PISA, we are able to look at student performance at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Finally, we'll use data from the International Computer Information Literacy Study of 2023 to understand U.S. performance in computer science. This will look particularly at the performance of 8th grade students internationally, and we can also use it to understand performance in computer science in the United States by student demographic factors. Jackie?
To look at the U.S. and its global competitiveness in higher education, we will present data on the number of doctoral degrees in STEM in selected countries using data from the OECD, as well as from individual countries such as China and India. For insights on the U.S. appeal and retention of international talent, we will present data on the stay rates of doctorate recipients on temporary visas, including intentions to stay in the United States at the time they earn their doctorate from the Survey of Earned Doctorates, as well as long-term stay rates, 5-year and 10-year stay rates for doctorate holders who were on temporary visas at the time they earned their doctorate from the 2023 Survey of Doctorate Recipients. In addition, we will look at data on international mobile students who are enrolled in tertiary education in selected countries based on data from UNESCO Institute for Statistics. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. Obviously, this is going to be an extremely rich report that will be read by interest by, I think, virtually every member of the National Science Board and far beyond that as well. So thank you for all the work that you have done. I can't wait to read it myself. At this point, I'm going to turn the floor over to our lead reviewer for this particular thematic report, and that is Wanda Ward. Wanda?
Thank you very much, Julia, and I too commend NCSES and you and your team for framing the current DNO that you brought to us. As I've said to you before, I think the new focus of this entire cycle, that being of discovery, talent, and translation, is timely and exciting. It'll help us focus on critical areas to help address U.S. STEM leadership opportunities and challenges globally. With regard to the DNO, I'm sorry, not the DNA, some of the higher level issues that are particularly of interest to me. But before I say that, I also want to commend the 5 major topics that have been selected for this cycle. I think that they are the right ones. And then my final comment, so that we can get to the other readers' brief comments, is that I think at a higher, more strategic level, this is a good opportunity for us to be able to see whether the issues that we are addressing and looking at align well with the evolving vision that NSP has been talking about. That is that of connected horizons. I wonder how well suited we are in the spirit of connections, if you will, to be able to look at critical education junctures, what those connections might look like as opposed to more siloed approaches. With regard to geography, I was pleased to hear that data are available to look at the state level, but also including the rural urban. I was very pleased to see the focus on the international comparisons. I think that fits us well in regard to a connected horizons framework or viewpoint. I'll stop there to give others some opportunities, but I'm excited about what's being framed in this outline.
Thanks very much, Wanda. NCSES team, do you have any initial reactions to Wanda's comments? Okay. Being short on time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to our other 2 reviewers. Let's turn first to Scott.
Thank you. Since I might be on a sudden time constraint here too. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to hit on just one very top level item of interest, and that's the synthesis of all these great sectional topics into a assessment of what level of STEM graduates, what throughput do we really need, and what is appropriate. To date, we all agree, I think, that more is better, but we have the data now on what the size of the workforce is. And in the outline, it was talking about projections on what the growth might be. And there's great breakdowns on, specific sub areas in there. But we also know what level of attrition, what number of people change career paths. I've seen that on earlier reports. We know what percentage of the workforce is going to retire. Then played off against that, we also know what numbers of graduates we're producing, and being able to interlay those and see, okay, we're short 100,000 graduates, or gee, we're actually overproducing, which we know isn't the case. But to be able to go in and actually quote, a quantitative assessment of, look, we are short by this many, we are at under capacity on producing STEM graduates. I think that would be a hugely beneficial assessment to have, to be able to pitch and really gauge the health of the enterprise, particularly down the road here. Any comments on the ability to produce something like that?
That's a really interesting question, Scott, and I want to get all the comments on the table, and then we will we'll get back to it. But the one thing I will say is, it seems like pieces of that are definitely there. Whether NCSES itself is in a position to pull that all together to make projections, that's potentially another question, and maybe we can entertain that. But the data might be able to be presented in a way that would enable others to do it if NCSES can't do it itself. So I just throw that in there for thinking about. So Scott, did you have other comments?
Very much second tier. So I'll turn it over to Vic, I guess.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Vic.
Hey, Julia, and thank everybody, and thank the group over at NCSES. I read the report. I thought overall it was very good. Just some major high points. I sent you something that has, typos and things like that. I would changes in grammar, but I think there's two major things that are extremely important, and I think there's one link so that that you are getting the full spectrum, and it doesn't seem somewhat one-sided from where you're coming from. So one of them is the labor groups. I actually put that in the chat. I would take for your consideration to look, instead of the 3 labor groups, to really look at degree and non-degree, because there is a vast shift going on in higher education. So many of those STEM workers who are going, particularly here in the federal government and in the Department of Defense with cyber, IT, and health-related STEM and AI, most of those are at the associate's level. So kind of make it easier, you can consider maybe looking at folks getting degrees, and then non-degrees will include certifications and trade schools, many which are not only in things like what you were saying in electricians and plumbers, but also in HVAC, in welders, and many of these are in national security positions, and they are using high technical skills. So one thing you should be careful, this is not your daddy's electrician. This is not about unskilled labor. These people are doing Laplace transforms. These people are doing coding for security. They don't have to have a degree. And as one person can, it's high salary also. So right now, when we went down to the Navy bases, they're looking for welders at $175,000 a year. So these are things that we should be able to talk to. The other thing is that I think you might want to, if you haven't already, to help you with this conversation, talk with Celeste Carter in the ATE program under the STEM Ed Directorate. She has data that you probably have, but maybe also other data that you may not have that speaks broadly, particularly to this non-degree community and the amount of jobs that they have. She works with the Georgetown Center for Labor that put out the report, Good Jobs That Pay Without a BA. And that Georgetown Center has really worked with the Department of Defense and the federal government that has gathered statistics, particularly for the non-degree labor force that are outside the scope of what you'll get from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as well as the new jobs that are emerging very, very fast. So, for example, the Department of Defense and parts of the federal government, HR, have now relaxed the requirements for 4-year computer science degrees. You no longer need that because the challenges and shortages they're facing, as one person says, the attacks on their systems are from people who don't have 4-year degrees. And so that's something to continue. So Celeste Carter, if you haven't, I'm sure you have, but she's right in the same building. She has vast amounts of data on this. And because the community colleges now have their own research journal that is being funded by NSF, the ATE Journal on Research, they're doing vast numbers of research and going right into industry fields with AA degrees, working, for example, in both the PV and EV industry. So that's that whole piece. I think you want to look at that as a cross, that you don't come across that you're biasing toward a degree or non-degree. Not saying that you would, but I think it's looking at a new paradigm shift that we're seeing. The other thing that just came across, and it was just a sentence, maybe you didn't imply it, but when you talk about STEM talent, and we talk about domestic STEM talent, as well as getting talent to stay here in the United States, I think you need to have a discussion on that, because more and more to say that you need both is a false equivalency. Okay, it's trying to equivocate both, because what's happening, it's a false equivalency in terms of priority. The priority is to develop domestic talent first, and then as you do, then supplement that. And I think that's a nuance, but it's an important nuance, because if you equivocate the two in your narrative, then people will do the easy thing, which is import more talent, versus the much harder road, which is, investing state by state into the educational system. The other part of that, which again, I would say talk to the folks, Rebecca Kaiser, she sits in classified rooms, shows that the domestic talent is here. It's just that it's not being harnessed to the degree we want. And so I would just say use those two resources inside NSF as you start gathering sources of information for that. Other than that, I thought this was very well written.
Yep. Just one other thing that was triggered by some of what Vic said in the chat and in his comments, and that is in the last report, I got terribly confused between middle skill workers and the discussion of degree by degree, and that has got to be fixed in the next report. It is terribly confusing to anyone who is not going to spend as much time as I do reading.
So that's why, Julie, I put that in the chat, because I don't know what middle skill STEM means.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't work.
And the only reason I say to change that language, and I'll shut up, is we want to come across that we see the entire environment. When you start talking about middle skill STEM versus, say, degree and non-degree, it comes from a place of an academic point of view versus a more whole industrial point of view.
Okay. So excellent comments from all of those primary reviewers. I'm pretty sure that some other committee members also have comments, so I will open the floor. Matt, do you want to say something?
Let me put this in the chat.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so we will look for Matt's comments in the chat. Do other committee members have comments at this point? Ryan.
One thing I found really compelling in the prior indicator report was a comment around the distribution, right? So, I mean, as you think about this coming together, of course, the averages are important, but there was something really special in being able to highlight the 10th percent as well as the 90th percent. Like I remember reading it, I just took a quote. It's like the gap between students scoring in the 10th and the 90th widened to 109 points, the largest it's been since the assessment began in 1987. And that just gripped me, because that's actually something very important to convey and get across. And so I'd really encourage the team to look and see which important pieces of data that are in this report that would benefit from showing off the distribution as well, because I think that's a compelling piece.
Great. Good point. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Yolanda.
I just wanted to make a comment about the career paths and the retention. So I think that there is a lot of online degrees, online certificates that I see students take, and it really gets them to either stay in a STEM degree or be attracted to STEM degrees, perhaps graduate STEM degrees. So my suggestion is to look at online achievement and online certificates and other activities that might contribute to changing the landscape. A lot of companies offer them, a lot of education online happening from universities and other organizations. And my second comment is to try to include any data that we may have about opportunities for undergraduates in research, opportunities for students to be involved in STEM-related projects, even if they don't pursue a major in STEM, because those might influence later career paths. And I think that data, I see more and more students changing their careers because of those education adjacent activities that don't have to do with degrees on themselves.
Thanks so much, Yolanda. Any other comments? Okay, well, NCSES team, including Christina and anybody else beyond the core writing team. Oh, Roger, yes.
this is sort of on the outside, but something to look for maybe in the next round. There have been threats and not threats. There have been intimations that with AI, there'll be a number of jobs that will be changed and maybe replaced. Is there something that we can look forward to in the next iteration that might imply overabundance of certain kinds of STEM training? That this is sort of getting back to Matt's, not Matt's, who called in? Anyway,
Scott.
Scott's comments about quantifying and projecting what's needed. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we can look forward in the future to knowing more about which STEM fields will be less needed because of AI and the implications of workforce replacement in STEM.
That's a really interesting question, Roger. And actually, it's starting to come up in the next thematic report, which is on translation or impact, and the penetration of technologies into different seemingly unrelated fields and things like that. So I don't know where it will come up, but that's highly relevant, and it's worthwhile for all the authors to be thinking about.
Let's go ahead.
Julia.
Last call. Yes.
I'm sorry, I am somehow missing my raise hand feature. This is a terrific presentation and outline. I have a more general question, and I'm sure I should know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway. And at what point in this committee do we actually have discussion about what data we wish we had, what surveys we wish we had, and what the process might be to work with colleagues to put those in place? And apologies, because I'm sure everybody knows the answer. No,
that's a wonderful question. I'm sensing maybe we won't have time for some of the discussion that I'd hoped we might be able to get into today, but I think that ought to be a topic of the next opportunity we have to meet that doesn't actually have an action item in front of us, so we can be a little more, contemplative and asking questions like that. So definitely hold that thought. I will say one thing that often leads to some of those conversations is that board and committee members say, this is a really big issue, and it could be the skilled technical workforce. It could be STEM teachers. What is it that we would like to know in order to be able to say something in policy land about that? And then that engenders conversations with our colleagues in NCSES about what data might be available, what they might be able to get their hands on, as well as what they have no clue about how we might be able to collect it, so that we can, iterate and get the data and our, kind of the thing that we are focusing on to line up. So that's one way, but it would be nice to have a more expansive conversation.
Thanks.
Last call. I can't see everybody, so if you have something to say, just shout out for a second. Okay, NCSES folks, any thoughts about the points that have been made today?
Yes, hi, this is Jason Gallo. I'm the Program Director at NCSES for Science, Technology, and Innovation Analysis. So thank you all very much for your comments. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your close read. Julia, thank you very much. Wanda, thank you as well as the lead reviewer. And to a few points that were made, I know Scott and Roger, you had points that overlapped about, assessing the level of throughput or looking at AI and automation and maybe future of work and whether we have an overabundance, I think was the phrase used in certain STEM categories. As you pointed out, Julia, we wouldn't make necessarily, policy level projections, but we can use the BLS projections in certain workforce areas. Those are, sister statistical agency, and so those are rigorous, and we can use those. We wouldn't necessarily draw a conclusion where we didn't have, data that's fit for purpose there to make that. But those are certainly points in the context in which we understand that this will be read by the board. Victor, I think your point, and Julie, I think you echoed this about confusing definitions. We agree, and that's certainly something we are cognizant of. And we'll certainly talk to Celeste as well in EDU. We appreciate that. I also think the point about Rebecca Kaiser and national security is well taken, that there are STEM jobs that do require citizenship in the US. And that really highlights, I think, the importance of that domestic and visa workforce that we've all talked about there. So that's something we've certainly talked about, and I was glad to hear it brought up here. Finally, Matt, your comment in the side, that is certainly something we are going to incorporate into the next round and looking at your comments. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Do any of this report authors, do any of you have anything to say at this point? You don't have to. I just asked.
Good job.
Okay. So, yes, this is a dynamic committee. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have such a lively bunch on the group. We're really going to go places this cycle. I think we're ready to vote to recommend this approval of this detailed narrative outline, subject to the comments and suggestions, consideration of the comments and suggestions that were made today. When we see the draft report, we will get some indication of how these things have been incorporated. And this is a process that has worked well in the past. So I think that we're in good shape there. So Amanda, I believe we have a quorum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to take a vote of SEP committee members only to approve the detailed narrative outline subject to the discussion today. And so committee members only, please indicate your approval by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I see a whole bunch of, okay. Is anybody opposed? Any abstentions? I don't see any. Okay, thank you. The narrative outline is approved. Thank you, authors, for all of your hard work to this point to whip that outline into shape and for your excellent presentation today. We look forward to seeing the draft of the report for review in the coming months. So thank you all for participating in the discussion on the DNO today. Based on your input provided during the telecon, the SEI team in NCSES will develop the draft report, which will be distributed for SEP and NSB review. That's way too many acronyms in one sentence. But that will be part of the external review stage of report development. Thank you all for a really outstanding set of discussions. That concludes our business for today, and the meeting is adjourned at 49 minutes after the hour.